All right, everybody, welcome. Thank you so much for coming to the East Baton Rouge Parish Library today. Before we start, could everybody, if you have a cell phone, please be sure it's on silent so we're not disturbed. For those of you at home, if you did not receive the email with the handout in it, it is available online at the Baton Rouge Room info guide, and I will show you how to get there in just a few minutes. This recording will be available on the library's Facebook page under our videos tab. It will also be available on YouTube and several other places in the library system. So if you need to go back and look at it for reference, it's going to be there. So my name is Melissa Eastin. I'm head of special collections here at the East Baton Rouge Parish Library. If you're not familiar with our department, we're located right upstairs on the second floor at the main library at Goodwood. We are actually a two-sided collection. We are genealogy, and the scope of our genealogy collection focuses primarily on the southeastern United States. Then we expand nationally and internationally. We have a great team up there, and we have a lot of wonderful resources. You can find all of this information on our genealogy info guide. If you go to the library's homepage, at the bottom, you'll see this little green leaf, and you can click on that, and that will have all the information about our genealogy department. We've got a wonderful physical collection. We have wonderful rare books, one-off printings, family stories that people have printed and donated to us. We've got periodicals from all over the United States, genealogy periodicals. And we also teach classes, much like this oral history class, that will help you become a better researcher. We teach about using Ancestry.com, Heritage Quest, maps and land records, even just getting started with basic genealogy. We've got wonderful online resources, and for those of you who don't know, right now, so far through the end of June, Ancestry, which is normally only available in the library, is actually available at home with your library card. So we're encouraging people who don't feel comfortable at home, to want to stay at home. You can get a lot of research done. We do one-on-one consulting. We can do it in person or on the phone. So if you're looking to explore or research your subject that you want to interview, our genealogy department is a great place to start. The second side of our department is the Baton Rouge Room Archives. I'm also fortunate enough to be the archivist. It's the best job in the world. Our venerable assistant director, Mary Stein, likes to call it Baton Rouge's attic. You can view a lot of our collection on our info guide. If you go, again, to the library's homepage down at the bottom, right next to the genealogy leaf, you'll see this little map, and you can click on that and find out all the information about the Baton Rouge Room. Our mission at the Baton Rouge Room is to collect, manage, preserve, and provide access to items that represent historical activities of people and organizations in East Baton Rouge Parish. We have displays, rotating displays. After the lecture, if you have time, I encourage you to go upstairs. We have a wonderful display of Baton Rouge Staycation. So it's historic hotels, maps, travel guides. We've got room service menus from the Belmont, little tchotchkes that people could buy at the old state capitol. It's really fun. It's one of my favorite parts of my job. And of course, we also collect oral histories, which is one of the reason that we are here today. The history of oral history. So before the written word, as soon as we could talk, we were telling stories to each other. And we were telling stories to each other about each other. And that is really how we captured our history for millennia before language became written. We still have the vestiges of that oral history. We see it in every aspect of our lives. Epic poetry from the Greeks, fables and folk tales from every culture around the world were passed down orally. Proverbs in the Bible, songs, Genealogies used to be oral. Could you imagine doing your genealogy just verbally? I mean, I see some genealogy trees that are incredible. So to have that as part of your culture. Prayers and family traditions. My husband and I were talking about this program, and one of the things that came to mind when I was thinking about capturing family traditions is that they would have a big Sunday meal and then they would have church at home. And my father-in-law would turn on the tape recorder and just let it run all evening. And it wasn't really formal or structured, but it captured these really wonderful special moments, little snippets of conversations or songs that they sang. You know, you could hear the harmonies in the family that, you know, are part of the oral history. Conducting oral histories. So that was an informal example of an oral history. We're here today to talk about something a little more formal. We're going to look at oral histories for families as well as organizations. And the principles I'm going to talk about will apply to both, will apply to one and maybe not the other. So it's up to you to pick and choose depending on your product. Oral history refers to both the method of recording and capturing the interview and the interview itself. It begins with an audio or video recording. You have one person who is the interviewer and the second person as the interviewee, also referred to as the narrator or the subject. They have a conscious agreement. They're sitting down together to capture this conversation. And it's an understanding that this is going to become part of the permanent record, whether it's your family collection or a collection of something more formal like our archives. Most of the time in more formal settings, oral histories are transcribed, but that's up to you and your personal project, whether or not you want to do that, but we'll discuss that more. Planning an oral history project. Before you start an oral history project, if you're just getting started, I always suggest that you listen to some oral histories. Everybody's got their own individual style of conducting oral histories. So, you know, take a selection. Again, this PowerPoint is available online. All these links are hot linked, so you can click on them. Here in our archives, we're fortunate enough to have several wonderful collections. We've got the Junior League Oral History Collection. We've got the YWCA Remembering the Struggle Collection, which examines women's roles in political and social history in Baton Rouge. And we've got the Where Were You When Collection, which is a more recent addition. So we have about 100 oral histories available, and some of these are available online in our digital archive. LSU has the T. Harry Williams Oral History Center, amazing work out of there, wide variety. Xavier University out of New Orleans has a wonderful selection of oral histories. And then a larger regional group called the Southern Oral History Program has lots of oral histories available to listen to. So I suggest, you know, take a little time. It doesn't have to be extensive, but, you know, see the pattern and the structure of an oral history before you start. I suggest you plan your program before you start selecting your interviewees. Once you have a concept of what you want to capture, it's going to help you decide who you want to talk to. I'm a big fan of a mission statement. Just take time to write down a few little lines. You know, if you're working with other people, maybe a more formal paragraph, you know, that will help inform your partners in the project. Or if it's you and your sister-in-law that are doing the project, capturing your family, y'all be on the same page about, you know, who's talking to who about what and what y'all want to capture and things like that. It's also very important to decide where and in what format your completed interviews are going to be stored before you start. Most of these, I imagine, will be captured digitally, you know, unless you want to go old school on a cassette tape. I think that's fine too. So most of the interviews that we capture are going to be in MP3 or MP4 format. have a place on your computer. It wouldn't hurt to have an external hard drive. In the archives world, we call it locks. Lots of copies keep stuff safe. I have lost an oral history. I lost one. That's all it took. It was heartbreaking. So definitely, as soon as you're done recording, put it in 2 or 3 places. Cloud storage is great. Google Drive is a great place. Apple Cloud, any place that you can digitally store your items, scatter it about. But just make a note of where you keep it. Also select and get to know the device you will use. And then again, plan on how you're going to organize. So it would be good if you're doing multiple oral histories to have a naming convention. And it could just be, Aunt Fran, and the date, March 3rd, 2022. But you're going to want to have consistency. So when you go back to try to find that file, it's going to be easy for you to recognize, oh, that's exactly what it is. So have all that in mind before you record, because it will make things much easier moving forward. So now in this digital world, there are many, many devices available that can help you capture high quality recordings. Most people have smartphones, and on most smartphones you have a voice memo app or a notes. I believe you can do voice memo in your notes. So you can capture your oral histories on a cell phone. And that's not a problem. High quality, most of the output I believe is MP3s. But just be sure you know how to get from your phone to your storage device. And that will probably, if you're doing it on your phone, it's most likely going to be through the cloud rather than hardwiring to a computer. But you could do that as well. But that would require software, and I'm not sure how that works. There are also these nifty little recorders. This little Olympus recorder is like $30 at Best Buy. And this you actually can, through USB, hardwire into your computer and drag and drop into a file on your desktop, and it works fine. But again, once you have recorded something, these devices don't have as much storage as these devices. So before you record a new interview on this, make sure you remove it from here and delete it, because if you go back to use this on another interview, you may run out of space without realizing it and lose part of your interview. So definitely always have a clean device before you start if you're using something like this. I'm not sure the storage. Oh, 493 hours, so you should be fine. It's been a while since I've used one. Matter of habit. I like to do that. So now, since COVID, we've also been Zooming and using Skype, and it is possible to record interviews that way too. Now, take note that Zoom, when you record on your laptop, you can save it. You can't record Zooms on your phone. It's my understanding. We did a little test, and you'd have to buy the app to use, you'd have to have a paid subscription to Zoom to be able to record and save on your phone, but it's free to do it on your laptop. Skype appears to be free. We tested it, and it looks like you can record for free on Skype. When you're done doing the interview, the recorded portion of your interview will show up in the chats, and then you can download it from there. On Zoom, when you record it, it will show up in your documents folder. And this is all on here. So again, be sure you know how to transfer everything using Zoom or Skype before you record, and just play around with it and see how it goes. There are lots of other options out there, I'm sure, but for the sake of brevity and in the little bit of time that we have, I can't go through all of them. But if you have questions, call us in the archives and we can figure it out for you. Okay, we just went over this, but some procedures for interviewing with Zoom and Skype. You do have to set a meeting with Zoom. You can do a call on the fly with Skype, but it's a good idea to plan ahead of time. With Zoom, you set a meeting and send an invite. Once you're ready to record, you can simply, hit record. Okay, and then we already went over this. There is some lag time we saw in the Zoom videos, but it doesn't affect your finished product. It should come out all right, but we just did little short ones just to see. Skypes are available for up to 30 days, so again, download as soon as possible. Public versus private projects. If you're conducting oral histories for private use, it's not really necessary to have a release form, an interview release form. However, note that interviewees own the copyright. So if you're interviewing Uncle Andre and he starts talking about how he cooks his gumbo and his crawfish etouffee, and you think, oh, well, I should write a cookbook about Uncle Andre's recipes, note that those are Uncle Andre's recipes, and using that oral history to do that is, you need to get his permission to do that. And I know that's unlikely, but it could happen. If you're making interviews available to the public, it's important to let your subject know that this interview will be available at this spot to this audience. That's something that, it's just courtesy, but also, when they sign the release form, they need to be informed because you don't want to cause ill will. And if you're doing a public project, word of mouth may get around and you may lose participants and then valuable historical information. So it's always best to be upfront about who's going to have access to it, when and where. There are options to restrict oral history interviews. I generally don't like to do that unless the information is extremely valuable. Because managing long-term, if somebody says, I don't want this information out until I die, who's to say that you're going to keep your word, but if you change jobs or change institutions or something happens and the person that follows you decides to release it, that's not good either. So managing restricted information can be difficult. So just keep that in mind. There is a sample oral history release form at the end of the packet. You can take it and do whatever you want with it. I think that one we took from Stanford University and kind of made it our own, and we had our parish attorney look over it. So it's pretty good. It's got all the salient points in it that, name, date, I agree to this, that, and so everybody is on the same page when they sign that release form. Once you've decided the scope of your interview, you begin to identify and contact the interviewees. You can do this through visits, through phone calls, through networking. If you're working at Exxon and Miss Jean in the front office has been there for 30 years, you could interview Miss Jean, but you could also ask her if she knows of some retired people that might be willing to talk to you, or some current employees that may be students of the history of the organization. So mining your interviewees is a lot of networking or knowing, people and connecting. So reach out. Again, when you approach an interviewee, clearly state the purpose of your mission, so they can agree or disagree, or say, no, I don't want to do that. And again, select candidates that are relevant to your mission. Mr. Johnny may have worked at Exxon for 2 years, and he's Miss Nancy's best friend's boyfriend, but he doesn't really know anything about the organization, but she thinks he should be involved. I mean, you know how it goes, right? So be careful about, if you've got what you want to capture, make sure that that person can help you capture that. Or you may just have a pleasant conversation. Either way. Research. So we talked about, that was the reason I wanted to introduce you to the genealogy department. Research is actually very important to an oral history project, even in your own family. Once you've made contact with the person that you want to interview, it's generally a good idea just to have a couple of really brief, over the phone or Zoom or Skype conversations, about the person's life, about maybe what they experienced, kind of lay some groundwork about what you want to talk, and do a pre-interview. They don't have to be recorded. I wouldn't record a pre-interview. And get to know each other a little better. This will help your conversation, your more formal conversation flow. And you're going to want to get in the pre-interview date of birth, these major life and career events. It's also a good idea to write out an outline. I should have brought an example, but before I sit down and interview someone, I have a legal pad, and I write out the main questions, and I give about a quarter of a page in between each question for my outline. Being fairly familiar with historical errors, so if you're interviewing someone, I interviewed this woman once who was part of the USO when it was the old state capitol. So I took time to interview or to research World War II Baton Rouge, and we had air raids here, and we had an air raid captain in certain localities who was responsible for initiating the air raid procedures in their neighborhoods, and I'd never known that. And so I was able to ask her, and it turned out her father was actually one of those block captains. So we were able kind of to capture that information, subtle little things about our era. And again, our genealogy department can help with that, and the Baton Rouge room. We've got lots of wonderful, great local resources, including the Advocate Historical Archive, which is our local papers digitized. So you could just flip through the newspaper and learn about local history and be able to ask, unexpected points, and bring out, surprising information. When you conduct an interview, set a quiet, comfortable place where you won't be interrupted or distracted. I'm laughing because when I listen to the Junior League oral histories, so many times a telephone starts to ring in the middle of the interview, and the women will get up and answer it, So, and it doesn't really hurt the interview, but I think it's funny, and they forget what they're talking about, and so if you can reduce distractions and reduce interruptions, your interview may flow better. Agree with your narrator on a limit for the interview. This was a rookie mistake I made once and ended up somewhere in Slaughter for like 4 hours talking to this woman. And it was a great interview, but it was really exhausting. And it was really the end product is just so long that it's kind of hard to get through. Even the transcript is extremely long. Usually, yes? Maybe I might answer it coming down the line, but I'm going to have time for questions at the end. Thank you. Before you start, check your equipment. Make sure your recorder is charged. Make sure you have full battery power. If you have a power pack that you can plug your phone into so you don't have to worry about it. If you're doing an online interview, make sure your internet is working and your subject's internet is working. And then their devices are all charged. And that may be something that you can talk about in the pre-interview. Again, call your subject a day ahead to confirm the appointment. Say, all right, Mr. Charlie, I'm coming to your house at 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. I'll see you then. Sometimes people change their minds, and sometimes they don't. So talked about the outline, have it, or at least have a piece of paper and something to write with, because you might actually need to make notes. Sometimes questions will occur to you through the interview, and you're going to want to write them down. Maybe, while somebody is talking, say, I want to remember to ask about this point, to remind yourself. Sometimes you're going to need to ask for spelling clarifications, locations, family names, things like that. Especially in South Louisiana with the different patois we have here, You know, somebody's family name may be spelled with an X or a U. It's good to have that information, especially if your information is going to be available to the public. At the beginning of the interview, record a lead. So in your pre-interview, you'll have all this information. And I was going to play one for you, but I couldn't get the audio to work. So it would be an introduction, something like, my name is Melissa Eastin. We're here with Mr. Charlie at his home in St. Gabriel. Today's date is April 11th, 2021. You know, it could be something as simple as that. And then, you know, Mr. Charlie, tell us what it was like growing up in St. Gabriel. And that's kind of how you segue into the interview. And once you listen to more online, you'll see how it goes. If you're doing a formal, you know, this is part of the Junior League Oral History Project, or this is part of the East Baton Rouge Parish Library Oral History Project. So your leads can be crafted however you want them to, or it's, you know, we're at Mama's house, y'all know where we are, kind of thing. Be sure the release forms are signed ahead of time. So when you go in and you're sitting down and getting set up in your quiet space and getting your recorders, you know, close, you don't want to be too far apart. I know we have to be 6 feet apart, but you know, to be sure that your device is picking up everybody's voices. And you can test this out ahead of time to see what your space limits are. So once you start asking questions, start with a general question. So, Mr. Charlie, tell me about what it was like growing up in St. Gabriel. The soft questions first. If you're dealing with more controversial topics, you know, okay, Miss Marie, what was it like desegregating Baton Rouge High? How did, you know, and you start there and listen, you know, but then as you get more comfortable, or you can gauge how the narrator is, how open they are, how willing. All right, can you tell us how it felt to have the other students treat you like an outsider, you know, or more poignant and personal questions should come later in the interview. And as you gain experience interviewing people, you'll be able to gauge, you know, how much they're willing to give you. You know, never push, never, like, if somebody obviously shuts down, don't push them, because you're not going to get what you want. And then the rest of the interview would just be uncomfortable and weird. Ask open questions, you know, open-ended questions, yes or no questions. You know, did you like this? Instead of did you like this, how did you feel about this? You know, things like that will let them decide where to go. And be a good listener. You know, there are times, you know, in an interview where I'll just count to 10. I just won't say anything. And a lot of times before I hit 10, they'll keep on talking about the topic. You know, and it gives people time to formulate their thoughts and their ideas and decide where they want to go. And a lot of times that's where really rich information comes out, is in those silent spaces. Be aware that sometimes interviewees will have scripts. You know, I know my grandmother, she had this pony, and this pony was this Auburn pony, and she rode this pony up and down the main street in St. Martinville, and every time she told that story about the pony, she stopped and talked to the same 3 people. You know, she rode that pony and saw a lot more than 3 people. You know, so people have a script that they tell. So trying to get people out of their script can be a little tricky, you know, and maybe if there's a break in the conversation, you know, you can say, well, Grammy, did you see anybody else besides Taunt, you know, Edel or somebody like that, you know, or was Taunt Edel cooking something, you know, creative, you know, try to get people out of their script. Again, it will be easier if it's a family member, you know, otherwise you may not know that you're listening to a script, and that's fine too, you know. Closing the interview sometimes can be tricky. Sometimes people still feel like talking. And again, if you listen to oral history interviews, you can see different strategies that people use to close an interview. You can say, you know, if somebody's reticent, if there's anything else you'd like to talk about, you know, and wait, you know, see what happens. If not, thank them for the interview and the interview. Say, this concludes our interview. Thank you very much. After the interview, again, I can't stress this enough. Save in at least 2 places as soon as you can. Implement your naming conventions that you put into place at the beginning of your project. I like to send a thank you note. I think it's just nice that somebody receives something in the mail. It's a non-traditional gesture, but especially for older people, I think it really lets them know that you appreciated their time. So take the time to write a little handwritten note, put a stamp on it, and mail it. Usually in your pre-interview agreement forms, you'll have somebody's address on there. I believe we have space for an address, so you'll have their address, and it's just easy to do. And then you can decide if you want to transcribe the interview. And usually for more formal interviews, I suggest you transcribe, because really that's where a lot of the researchers go first to access this information. Is they'll go to the transcription first and then to the interview. Again, why transcribe? Information becomes more accessible when it's in a written format. Researchers prefer to look through transcripts. Transcriptions also help to provide correct spelling. They provide clarification for misunderstood or jumbled or messed up audio. And it can result in a more accurate account of the interview. Transcription takes a long time. It takes a long time. There are softwares that you can use for them to be less than reliable. They're not great, especially with some of the thicker accents that we have down here. What do they call it? The central New England accent, where nobody has any kind of inflection. It's all those movies, they all sound like this. Obviously, we don't have that here. There are transcription services that will do it, but it's expensive. I generally just type them out myself. In the packet that you have are tips on transcription. I'm not going to go through all of them. If you decide to transcribe, you can read through them. And we have lots of resources online you can use should you decide to transcribe. Some of the challenges of transcription: spoken language is very different from the written language. It's impossible for a transcription to capture all of the nuances. This is very important. It's important to change as little as possible in a transcription. If you're or even deleting audio. If you're interviewing a family member and something hurtful or painful comes out, it's important to leave that there, because it was that person's choice to share that. And if they are an informed subject going into this, they know who's going to listen to the interview, and that's up to them. So editing an oral history interview is not something I would recommend. More in depth about transcription are found in the handout. Here at the library, we've got a bunch of great books on oral history. Most of these are on the shelf. I checked on the Overdrive one, this highlighted one here, and it is checked out. But of course, you can go to our digital library and you see the books, the little triangle, orange triangle, and that's our audiobook section. Just search the title or click on this record and you can find it, and you can place a hold on it, and you can look at it from home if you don't want to come to the library. Of course, you can put all these books on hold and pick them up in the drive-through, or come to the library and pull them right off the shelf. Lots of options. We are happy to help. My laptop just died. That's a new one. We are happy to help you with your oral history projects. You can give us a call in the library. I've got a bunch of handouts on the table outside with all of our information about special collections. So please feel free to call us. It just went, it said 40 minutes on my laptop. Okay, we do have time for questions. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
You mentioned like having like a time limit on whenever you're interviewing someone. Like you mentioned like something about it being 4 hours. What if you have like an hour and a half set and it's not enough time to get through everything? Do you do like multiple sets?
You can absolutely, and I have done that. And it just depends on, how you're feeling and how your subject is feeling. If you're getting great information and everybody is still energized, it's fine to go long. It really is. It just depends on your situation. Yeah. How do you keep a subject on track? Sometimes you can't. You can redirect, you can let them, and if you have notes, you can write down your notes. Oh, we were talking about this, but, I also want to talk about this, so you could let them finish their point, bring them back to your subject with your next question, and then, if you could find time to maybe say, you mentioned, at the end of your interview, you could go back and say, you mentioned this point. Would you like to talk about that more? So oral histories are very fluid. It seems like I gave you a lot of structure, but that's just really something that you can expand on. And nothing is set in stone. And a good interviewer, and with practice, the more you do it, the more you can go with the flow, and practice. When I was getting my library degree, we actually did do practice little oral history interviews, so it doesn't hurt to take time and practice.
I'm currently, I have only one family member I need to interview. And now I'm going to set up the structure for them to interview me.
That's a great idea.
That's the thing.
Yeah. Well, we talked about at the beginning the tradition of oral history. That oral histories were handed down from generation to generation. And teaching other people to conduct oral histories is a great way to carry on that tradition in your family.
I was going to say, not the question as much as the statement. There are actually apps out there, you may have mentioned this when I go through the state, that actually transcribe for you as well.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. And again, what quality of transcription are you getting? And we haven't really played around with them. Some of them are pay apps, so you can definitely check it out and do what works for you. Things are changing, and there are some apps that will allow you to Story World or something like that, where you can buy apps that will help you record your oral histories and add a picture and store your information for you, and that's absolutely another way to go. But it's up to you. There's so many new things and many options to do that I, again, couldn't really cover all of them in this interview.
To listen and write it out yourself?
Yeah, it's more personal, and the thing I like about conducting oral histories and then transcribing them is that, when I go back and look at or listen to the information and transcribe it, I learn more. I don't just learn more about conducting oral history interviews, but I learn more about the person that I interviewed. Because when I'm interviewing, I'm listening, but I'm also thinking about what's next, and is the recorder working, or is the dog going to bark, things like that. So for me, it becomes a more personal thing doing it like that. But again, that's up to your individual choice. Any other questions? Let me show you real quick. So this is the Baton Rouge Room info guide. It's on the library's homepage. And this is where you can get a lot of your information for research. This is where the handout and the PowerPoint for this workshop are. So you can go back and check on the hyperlinks All of these little windows are different interviews that we have. We've also got on our digital archive a section for oral histories that you can listen to. Oh, it's in the right spot. So our digital archive right here. And this is also where you can find lots of super fun pictures and other bits of information about Baton Rouge history. But oral history is right here. So you can go through and listen to a sample of the oral histories that we have here at the library.
Do you have to check those out virtually, or can you just go in and...
You can just go in and listen to them. All of the websites that are hot linked, you don't have to check anything out. You can just go and click on them and explore and listen. The Library of Congress also has a bunch of really great oral histories too. I thought about hot linking it, but there just wasn't one neat kind of package. They're kind of all over the Library of Congress website. So it's a chronicling, well, it's not Chronicling America. Chronicling America does have a bunch of them, but they have a bunch of great oral history interviews on Library of Congress that are really fun to listen to. Other questions? Well, all right, I know we went kind of short, but all right, well, thank you so much for coming. And again, check out special collections. Oh, one more thing, on Wednesday, we're going to be doing, we have a speaker coming in. Marianne Sternberg is going to be talking about her book, Stories Along River Road. It's going to be Wednesday at 6 o'clock in the large meeting room. Come and join us, or join us on the internet. All right, thank you for coming.
I'm so glad y'all back to having live.
Me too, me too. This is the first one I've done in over a year. So that, my timing's a little off.
The online was it's something about coming to the library.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, the only thing is you gotta be at the library to do research.
Yeah.
For me, this is where you come.
Yeah. Yeah, and the research is my favorite part of doing an oral history. I mean, I love the whole thing, but
And I hate myself because you don't know how many times I wish I would have taken the tape recorder and have my aunts and my mama's brother and sister. I used to love to listen to them. They would get back and forth, and now Winnie, you know, Daddy didn't do that. And it's like little stuff you learn, and I'm telling my kids, and I'm like, God, I know, you know, and you're trying to think, it's like, why did I just, I mean, you had a tape recorder. I mean, everybody had a tape recorder.
yeah, everybody did back then, yeah.
Pop a tape in, you know.
Yeah, well, and the tapes that my father-in-law did are so amazing. You know, it's just really incredible, really incredible.
Imagine, you know, like, oh my God, listen to this, and you have the voices, you have everything.
Yeah, it's awesome. So if y'all have any questions, again, just grab, you know, I've got bookmarks and flyers out there with my information on it. It's on the documents online. Call me anytime, and I'm happy to help you.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you for coming, everyone. Enjoy the beautiful day.